Hello and welcome to VectorPro 8.0.1. If you're upgrading your software, you may need to upgrade your firmware to version 3.1.7. If you're in any doubts, please contact Mecmesin technical support and they will be able to assist you in upgrading the firmware. So what's new? We have the new VectorPro installer, SQL Server support, batch set samples and batches set to a minimum of 1. User-defined ELS load limits, move to percentage of absolute position, automatic batch set export, Excel export for batch sets, some minor translation changes, and removal of the onboard keyboard icon. There are 2 versions available to download, with and without the Microsoft SQL Server Express support. Here is the new installer. This is the installer with just the VectorPro. And the second installer is with VectorPro and the Microsoft SQL Server 2019 Express. Only install this version if you need to use the SQL Server. Next thing we'll look at is the SQL Server. So if we go to permissions, we can now see a new area called SQL Server with an on-off button. If we turn it on, then we can enable the SQL Server. Only do this if you have installed the SQL Server. Otherwise, leave the button off. So I've enabled it and now it's linking to the SQL Server and VectorPro is rebooting. And you'll notice at the bottom the change database and the export database functionality has been turned off. This is while you're enabled to SQL Server. We go back now, and if I want I can turn it off and it will repeat the same process of unlinking from the SQL Server and rebooting VectorPro, and now my icons are back. Next thing we'll look at are the batch sets. So I'm going to create a batch set from this test. It's the same functionality before, renaming, changing the access. And now on samples per batch, we've added in 1 sample per batch as well as the unlimited question mark. And we've done the same for number of batches. So you have 1 and still have the unlimited question mark. So you can do 1 sample and 1 batch now if you wish. Next thing we'll look at is the user ELS limits. So if we edit a test, we go and look at the operations tab. You'll see a new section down here. We have a little on-off button for the protection. If we turn this on, it enables the 2 input boxes. The top one is for compression, the bottom one is for tension. And in here we can put a force value that we want the machine not to go over during a test. So that's particularly useful if you're using a smaller grip or fixture which is rated lower than the current capacity of the load cell. So I've set these to 500 in tension and compression. So that means now if I'm doing a test, I won't exceed that value and it will enable me to protect any grips or fixtures which are fitted to the machine. Next thing we can take a look at is batch exports. So now when you're creating a new batch, we have a new export section. So there's the original export section, and then we have a new one called batch exports. So this is when you're running batches of tests. So we have a text and an Excel export, and in here we can automatically enable this. We can overwrite. We can export per batch or per batch set. We've got tab delimited, comma separated exports. There's the standard folder to choose where you want it sent with a prefix and also a batch file prefix. We also have the Excel exports. We can enable this automatically. We've got the same batch or batch set. We can overwrite and we can display Excel. And we've got our prefix and our folder for destination for the export, and also our standard where do you want the data to start within the sheet. Now we can look at absolute position Here you can see I've loaded a sample and I've set my absolute position as the two compression plates touching together. Now we can look at the test setup. So we go to the edit, go to our test operations, and under target at the bottom you'll see we've got a new icon, percentage ABS, and this will move the crosshead to by a percentage from the current absolute position. So I've created a test. In this test I put it in position number 4. So our test is tar all values, a touch on of 1 Newton, touch the top of the sample, 0 displacement, and then we're going to compress to a percentage from the absolute. This time we're going to compress by minus 50%, so we're going to compress the sample by 50%, and then we're going to return home. So if we exit out of here, we'll save our changes, and we can run a test. So we start the test, zero everything out, and then our first thing is to move to our touch on of 1 Newton. Once we've reached our 1 Newton, we should start to compress the sample. The bus is approximately 48 millimeters high, so we should be stopping at 24 millimeters. Let's get to the end of our test and it will finish. Here we go, return back to home. And now we can go and have a look at our sample. And we'll see now we've compressed our sample by 50%. And those are the new features of VectorPro 8.0.1. Thank you for watching.